So welcome all for the introduction to Microsoft Azure Storage. Basically, before moving directly into the Microsoft Azure Storage, I want to say something regarding the Azure Solution Architect certificate because that certificate is having a huge demand in the IT sector. As you all know, cloud computing is one of the cutting edge technologies we are having, and it is almost used like if you say about the percentage of share it has in the market is approximately more than 60%, right? It's like incomparable with the Amazon. So we can say that the share of cloud computing, Azure cloud computing is very high. So there are a lot of things which we have in this our course. So I just want to give a glimpse of our course. In the Azure Solution Architect, we have Introduction to Microsoft Azure, on which we already have conducted webinar. If you want to have a look, you can also go to our YouTube channel. Introduction to ARM and Azure Storage, which you are going to see today. And there are also other modules like virtual machines and other like Azure App Service, Container Service. So it's a huge topic, right? Azure is huge. We just can't say like, but we can cover mostly in one session. But if you want a full course on Azure Solution Architect, we also provide that along with the completion of course certificate completion from our Cornerstone Advisory company. So basically, I just wanted to show you the glimpse. So if you are interested, to let me know for the full course. I will tell in detail about the same. So welcome. Welcome to today's topic of Introduction to ARM and Azure Storage. So if I just want to ask you, people like, have you like done anything with respect to Azure? Like you can type yes or no. Are you new to Azure or you have worked in Azure? So what is it? Just a little bit I want to know. So that I will take that kind of speed, right? That everyone can understand. If you are new, then get that type N. If you are experienced, you can type E in the chat box. You can use the chat bot, guys. Um, so you can use the chat box to just tell me if you are new or you are experienced in Azure. So we will go in that speed. You can type E or you can type N. Am I audible? Okay. Okay, new. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can receive your messages now. Okay, so you guys are new. Some people are having difficulty in joining. Some are. Okay, let them see. So basically, you guys are new, so we will don't need to worry. We will go very basic. We are covering fundamentals, so there is no issue. And also in our course, we provide the practical things also. It's not just we are going via theoretical and you mug up things and you're not applying that practically. So application is very important. It's important to learn the theoretical part to understand the fundamentals and why we are doing what we are doing end to end business perspective. But it's not like that. We have to understand the practicality of the theoretical things which we are learning. So we will also go through that. Basically, we are going to discuss Introduction to ARM and Azure Storage. In the first module, when you guys were not there, you can have a look into that in the YouTube channel. We discussed about Introduction to Cloud Services. Basically, what is cloud and what and all services is providing. See, cloud is not like we are saying it's something very advanced technology we are using, but cloud is mostly servers. They are providing a utility. Like, at home, what we have gas coming through the pipeline, we have electricity power socket in our home, installed in our home, which is bringing electricity, but we don't know where that electricity is getting generated. Do we? We don't. We don't know where electricity is getting generated, but we use it as a utility. Similarly, goes for the water supply or the gas supply. We're just using it as a utility. We don't know, like, where it is getting generated or the internal functionality. Similar way, Azure Cloud Computing is kind of a utility service which we all use on our daily basis. So I think someone wants to say that you can go on mute. Gautam. Gautam can go on mute.
Yes,
Gautam, you
ma'am.
want to say something?
No, ma'am, no.
Okay, sure. So there are two Gautam. Okay. So basically, what I was saying is cloud computing, you can consider it as a utility, okay? And basically, you just consume it based on your usage. You're not worried like, yeah, I have to install, have an upfront cost, I have to install this software, I have to install that software. No, cloud vendor is taking care it for you. That is Azure. In our case, it is Microsoft provider. So we are using Azure. For Amazon, it is AWS, and similarly for Google, it is GCP, right? Google Cloud Platform. So moving on, what are the content for today's discussion? In ARM, when we say ARM is the full form of Azure Resource Manager and Azure Storage. So in one of the services today we are discussing is storage service. So Azure, Microsoft Azure provides us with Azure Storage. So we will see what kind of storage it provides, and also we will discuss about ARM template. So before that, I think we should cover a little bit basic of Azure. So yeah, before jumping into the directly to the Azure blob and tables and queues, we should know what is ARM, what is Azure resource, basic Azure storage account, what are the different types of storage account. So we will cover that first. So content is Azure resources and subscription, Azure resource manager, managing Azure resources, Azure tags, Azure storage account and its type. Azure storage and Azure resources is like, you must have heard like in cloud computing it's like a UI portal. Have you seen this kind of portal before? So this is the Azure portal which we have. In that one, there is something called subscription. Okay, yeah, Muruk. So there is something called subscription. So you have different kind of subscription, developer subscription, enterprise subscription. Before entering into resource group, first you need subscription. Please take that is very important. Before creating any resource group inside Microsoft Azure portal, you need to have a subscription. If you don't have a subscription, you can't log in into the portal. So the first thing is you should either have a developer subscription, or if you are at enterprise level working for an organization, big MNC, then you need an enterprise level subscription. So that your managers might be dealing with, they must be buying subscription. So that is clear, right? We are going very slowly. And the second most important thing is you should have a Microsoft account. Before logging into the portal, you would need a Microsoft account. These things I discussed broadly in the courses which were delivered. Broadly, we'll discuss what is a Microsoft Azure account. These are some basic concepts which I'm just repeating because you guys were not there in the first module. So you can join our WhatsApp community also to get in touch. So after that, I'm saying that before moving to creating resources, we should create a resource group. How will you create a resource group? We need to get subscription. How will you get subscription? You need to have a Microsoft account. So this is all hierarchy. First, you need to get a Microsoft account. So there is a step-by-step procedure. First, you create a email account, and then you log in, give your card details. Whether it's nowadays they're allowing debit cards, you apply the debit card, and first month you will get free credits, like 17,000 rupees, I think, credits you give. And you can use as many resources as you want in Azure. You can practice, you can deploy. You will be not charged anything because Microsoft is providing you free credits for the first month. Now, coming to the second month, you have to pay. You can't go for the free subscription because if you're deploying something in portal, then you have to pay the minimal amount which you're using. So but you don't need to worry for that because anyway if you're not going to use it, you can pause it, you can disable it, then you will not be charged. So like that, this is the scenario. You have to create an account, log in into the portal, get a subscription, your work is completed. But you need a Microsoft account and you need to mention the card details because it's a paid subscription. 1 month is given free. From second onwards, you will be charged for whatever you're creating for the enterprise or your community. So now after subscription comes a resource group. Inside the resource group, all the things will be covered. It is like an umbrella. You will have Logic app, Function app, storage account, Cosmos DB, everything, authentication, everything will come under this Azure resource group umbrella. It looks like this, which I have mentioned. So this we have discussed. It's logical grouping of resources. Azure resource group is like that, and you can have different. See, in our project, what we have seen, you have development environment, right? You have development, QA, production. So based on different environments, test environment, sandbox. There is some other sandbox where testing is done. So based on the environment, you do provide resource group. Like you can have a different resource group, RG for a development environment. You can have a different resource group for QA, or you can have a different resource group for production. Okay, we will take your doubts at the end of the session. You can just note. And last 10 minutes, we will take the doubts. Okay, no worries. So this is just the basics I'm going through. It looks something like this. If you see in the screen, it looks something like this. It's a portal. In this portal, you can see you have a lot of things like, as you can see, I have mentioned resources. So what is a resource? Logic app is a resource. Okay, Logic app is a resource and it comes under the panel of resource group. This is a resource group and these are the resources. Resources can be function app, logic app, storage account, blob, Azure AD. So there are a lot of resources in Azure. You will see like there are more than 100 services in Azure. So we can go on and on about it. This is how you will create. It's a step-by-step procedure. Once you get the subscription, once you got the dev or the enterprise, then you have to click on creating a resource group. How you will do that? This is how you will do that. They will ask you, what is a subscription? You will mention that. What is the name you want to keep? Supposing you want to keep development, you will mention that. Region. Now, what is region? Now, as you know, Microsoft is deploying, you must have heard in, sometimes you must have heard in news like Microsoft has bought so much of land for creating servers. They are creating servers in South America. They are creating in North America. They are buying land. So what they are doing? They are creating data centers. So every data center is located in different region, whether it's a UK West, Canada Central, from Asia Pacific. So there are Australia, like for all the continents, continent wise. So they have different regions in Azure. So you have to select which region in my opinion, if you're working for a client, supposing you're working for a Canadian client or a US client, definitely you will prefer a region which is closer to your client, right? You will prefer something like Canada Central or US North America because your region or your data center is closer, then your application will perform better. That's what I'm saying. It's region. If you're working in Canada, you're working in US, if you're selecting Asia Pacific, that is that is logically not correct. Then you have to select, if you're working in UK, definitely you will select your data center which is having a UK data center, not something in Asia Pacific or a Europe, right? So based on your region, it depends. You have to accordingly select the resource group region and then create resource group. So this was important. And like that, you will click on next and configure the resource group. And this is how it looks like. You created a resource group, and inside that you can see a SQL server is also maintained. So what does a resource include? As we already discussed, you can have multiple resources inside a resource group. You can have a storage account, integration service, virtual machines, database, logic app, Kubernetes. Kubernetes is basically part of DevOps. Now, DevOps is another huge topic itself. We are not going to go into that, but this is also a service. This is also a resource which can be kept inside a resource group. So this is how it looks. There are a lot of services which I've included here, like a blockchain. Now at the cutting edge is blockchain, also AI, ML. Compute will VM. Now what is compute? Just giving you a brief introduction. Compute basically comes in the VM. Now, why it's a compute service? Because you're doing some computation in using a VM. If you deploy a VM in your portal, then you can see you can log in into that VM and perform the all the applications, run your software applications and execute everything. Basically, it's providing you a computing service. So VM is a part of compute service. So there are multiple, like you have a platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, software as a service. So compute VM will come under the infrastructure and platform database and
Mhm.
logic will come under your
Yeah.
yeah yeah. We can take the doubts at the end. You can mention the chat. We will take in the end of the session, last 10 minutes. Okay. So containers, we have platform as a service. You can mention database, logic app, function app service. These are all part of platform as a service. Okay. And DevOps, guys, DevOps is a part of software as a service. Okay. Software as a service, that is part of DevOps. So moving on, this is what we discuss is Azure Marketplace. This is known as Azure Marketplace where you can see all your services access. Now after creating resource in a resource group, supposing you created a storage account, as you can see in the left panel, this is the panel how it looks like. Access control, you click on that access control, view my access. Here you can see whether you have assigned a dev access or admin access or architect role assignment. So there's a different kind of role assignments which you can see at the left hand side panel here, access. Okay. You can check which assignment you have. So this we already discussed. Subscription can be consumption based model. What is a consumption based model? You pay as you go. Whatever service you are using, you will only pay for that kind of service. You will not pay extra. Whatever usage you have done for the service, you will pay that amount and you will be charged based on that amount. Okay. So this we have already discussed. Azure Resource Manager. Resource Manager now. What is Azure Resource Manager? Basically, as the terminology itself suggests, it's the management of Azure resources. So where are all the resources kept? In resource group. So basically, it is managing all your resources which you have created inside Azure resource group. Like for example, you have a logic app, you have a storage account. Now you want to create deploy those multiple storage accounts in different environments. Okay, you have to take those resources to different environments. So that's a quick way to do it. Like they Microsoft portal have provided a solution to that is ARM templates. You can use template. That's basically a JSON kind of a template. You can create replication for resources. Like if you want to suppose deploy logic app, you will specify the instances, how many instances of logic app you want to deploy in which environment. There will be a template kind of a thing which you can use and it will do that. So as they have mentioned, with the move to the cloud, many teams have adopted agile development. So you all know what is agile development. We are all moving into agile sprint model. You must have heard scrum call agile. We are all following that. So that means more bugs are analyzed and more changes are required. So they are iterating very quickly. 2 week sprint we have discussed. Like within 2 weeks, your change is getting deployed. Earlier, it used to take months and months to deploy a code. 5 months is taking to go take the code to production. But now it's not like that. Within 2 weeks, we are going to production. We are getting the bugs. We are again repeating, fixing the bugs again, taking the code to the production. So it's like agile model. It's iterating very quickly. So what they need to repeatedly deploy their solutions to the cloud. The deployment increases, the infrastructure as a manager comes into picture. Azure Resource Manager comes into picture. That's what we are saying. ARM basically it automates your deployment, different deployment of different Azure resources to different environments. So I have used this. You can also try this. To meet these challenges, you can automate deployment. Basically, yes, we automate the deployment using Azure Resource Manager. It is all part of infrastructure as a service. So you might have seen yourself or your friends working in ARM templates or working for DevOps. What do? They create a template. They create a template and they automate the deployment. They are not doing manual work, not at all. They are using the templates, Azure Resource Manager, and they are doing the automation using those templates. They are, yeah. To implement infrastructure as code for your use ARM templates are used. It's basically, as I mentioned, it's a JSON file. Okay. What I can tell you with my experience is, suppose you want to take your different higher environments, right? You want to take it to QA or prod. Two files are there. One is the parameter file, and one is the template.json. There are two files. You must have seen, like if you interact daily with DevOps team, what do? They have two files. One is parameter.json, one is template.json. What is the difference between the two? Parameter will contain all the variables which are going to change within the environment. Supposing you're changing the password, some credentials, it will differ based on the environment. And in the template.json, it will have the whole code, what you have written in Logic App, what connections you are using, whether you're calling an API, whether you're calling a database, Cosmos DB, that and all flow will be in the behind the scene. It is all JSON, or you know already, it's all JSON. So basically, what you're saying is you're deploying two templates. Then there is procedure. You have a YAML, and then you define the steps and all that is DevOps. But what I'm trying to say, it's all JSON file, and you can edit it, and you can define your logic app or resources and parameters in those files. That is the template automation using the ARM templates. As I have also given you a screenshot, you can go to this link, create and deploy Microsoft link it is, because they have mentioned step by step how you do create and deploy ARM template by using the Azure portal. HTTPS learn.microsoft.com Azure resource. You can go here and check how they have done it. You will have to type in the search bar deploy a custom template like this we have mentioned. When you click on deploy a custom template, it will open a template for you. Like this, it will open. What you can you see my screen, guys? You can see.
Yes, sir.
So you can see something like this will open. So basically, what is this custom deployment? It will ask you if you have already created a template, it will ask you to open the template, quick start template. And might be you have to create this resource again and again, and you have to deploy that in production so many number of times. Then you don't want to create the template so many number of times. You create a template and keep it in your local. When you're using it for deployment, you fetch that from that location, you select quick start template and start using it. Or you can edit a template, build your own template in the editor. This also you can do, or you can use the existing template. This is how you will proceed. It's very very easy. Supposing this is yeah, we are looking, it's also beneficial cost wise. Like supposing you're deploying 100 resources, then you can't do manually. It's very like time consuming, and you're doing the same process again. So automation comes into picture whenever we talk about ARM templates, basic JSON files. They are mentioning tags. What are Azure tags? So basically, Azure tags, you all know, based on environment, you can specify tags like which environment you're using. It's a dev or a QA or test, like that you can define. Now coming to our another topic of another service, we have Azure storage. So actually Azure storage is also part of infrastructure, as I tell you. It's also part of infrastructure as a service. Why it is part of infrastructure as a service? Because infrastructure as a service says that Microsoft Azure is providing you the hardware, it is providing you the memory, the CPU. So all this comes as a part of storage only, right? It cannot be a platform as a service. No, cannot be a software. It's a hardware. It's a memory. So when Microsoft Azure is providing you with all the memory and the CPU and all the things, so we say Azure storage is a part of infrastructure as a service, which is a Microsoft offering, very good offering, Azure, and heavily used. It's very, very important. In every project, you will use this because storage, right? It's a storage. If there are big files, then blob. If there are small files, there is Azure file. So based on the content data what you're having, it's a storing images or videos, you'll go for a blob. So Azure storage account and its types. Basically, it is telling if you want to use a blob or a file, first you need to create a Azure storage account. If you don't have a Azure storage account, you can't create a Azure blob or a file. That is a must. You should have a container, you should have a storage account. Inside the storage account, I think first is the hierarchy goes like this: storage account, container, and then your blob. So you have to define storage account, then you have to define container. Inside you can place your blob. And inside that blob, you can keep your files, images, videos. Basically, it's for heavy, big files, images and videos. It's take a lot of memory. So blob is used for that. It has various types, like as I mentioned, blob storage, binary, blob storage. Files are there, tables are there, queues are there. So there are a lot of different types of storage accounts which we have. This will be discussed later in detail in the future modules. But since we are focusing in this, so we can just go through it. So this is done. The part two of this contain, as we were discussing, the blob storage. So this is, guys, this is very huge topic, but whatever I will be able to cover in this module, I will cover. If you guys want to come have a complete course module, as some guys have joined later, I can tell we have a complete resource for the training purpose. We have full course, so you can get in touch with me for the full course. Okay, we have full course for Azure Solution Architect for the certification we provide, and then you can go for a Microsoft certificate. So yeah, moving on. For this topic, we have Azure Blob Storage, Azure Content Delivery Network, Azure File Storage, and Azure File Sync. So what is Azure Blob Storage? It is one of the most important services offered by Microsoft. As I mentioned, it's very, very important. Blob storage is one of the most and highly used service in Microsoft. It serves mainly two purpose. Its main purpose is to store files. As we all know, storage account means we are going to store files. If it's a heavy file, Excel file, then we'll save it in blob. If it's just images, we'll save it in blob or video. So you all get it. Its main purpose is to store files, your backup files, where you put your database files, your JPGs, your videos. The other purpose is the backend of virtual machine. Now, if you guys will remember, or if you are new to Microsoft Azure, while you create a virtual machine, always remember it will automatically create a Azure Blob Storage. So this is what it is mentioning. Whenever you create a virtual machine at the backend, it creates a blob storage. There are a lot of services in Azure that needs a storage account sometimes. Okay, so that is the second purpose of blob. Storage account varies pricing by region. So it also depends, like supposing um, you are in a region, in a Microsoft California region, and you need a storage in that region. Sometimes what happens, the storage might be expensive, and also there is a possibility in United States also there might be some regions where the pricing is little lower. So you have to check that based on reasons. So they are also mentioning about Brazil region, some of the most expensive storage is there. Maybe the latency is, maybe less traffic is there, so they have more low latency, like you are getting the response quickly. That might be possible. So they're mentioning based on the region also sometimes the pricing of the storage differs. You have to note that point. What I'm saying, based on your region, the pricing will differ. For Brazil and all, they're mentioning some may be expensive, and it might be possible like in places like US where it's heavy traffic, the prices may be lower in some region. It's not like always the same pattern. And you have to, sometimes it's a standard, sometimes geo redundant. So geo redundant is what they will have a replica. Supposing what happens due to some calamity or some unavoidable situation, your data can get lost. So nowadays data is the key. If your data is lost, everything is lost. So you have to create a backup, geo redundant storage. So that time geo redundant storage comes into picture. You define that, and based on that you get the premium service. So whereas the premium storage is high performance, but it is expensive also. Cost is always there, remember. While choosing these storage services, we have to be cautious of the price and costing. Because premium storage, if you're selecting a region which is having a high, low latency and getting a quick response, and premium service storage, but maybe expensive. So you have to take your budget into consideration, because these factors will define which storage you're going to use. If you need a high performance, if you're using a storage for very high sensitive banking transactions which require optimum level of frequency, and it is very high performing area, banking and finance is the, I think, one of the places where people can't wait for their transactions. So in that kind of services you have to go for a premium storage. But in services like there is very less transaction, supposing you're buying some agriculture products or which is not having that kind of a rush, or online, some portals who are niche products, who are not having that high performance website which is not having that rush, you can go for a low standard storage. But for some cases like a banking or highly scientific or defense places, high performance is a must, you can't avoid it. Then you have to pay premium price for that. It is expensive and cost almost 10 times. You have to pay 10 times more. You also pay for the number of requests you make. So these and all are the factors, guys. These are all the factors which define what kind of costing will be charged to you. So basically your number of requests you make to the storage also define your costing. Like supposing I am a developer and I am giving a request to my storage, premium storage, like 5 times, and some other guy is giving 10 times. So definitely number of requests also matter. If you're giving more number of requests, that also will define the costing. If you need quick latency, as I mentioned, if you need quick latency, you need a quick response, go for a premium tier. Standard storage lets your file store all over the world. It's geo redundant. In case of failure, in local, Microsoft is keeping 3 copies of your files in case of files are lost locally. If you're going to upload one file in Azure, it's going to keep 3 more locations. So this is the meaning of geo redundancy. Standard redundancy and geo redundancy. It keeps 6 copies. Yeah. Zone redundancy, sometimes it is zone redundancy, local redundancy. There are 3 types of redundancy. Data backup. So sometimes they will have a backup of 3 more locations. For geo redundancy, it's global, so it will keep 6 copies of the data files. That's how you keep the backups. Now, if you look into the portal, this is how your portal looks like. You have to create a resource group, number one. Then you have to start creating storage account. After creating storage account, after selecting the storage standard or a premium, you can then create container. As I mentioned, under the storage account, you will have something called container. Once you add container, now this is important. What if you want to use this storage or a container blob in your logic app? How will you do that? These are the steps which I have mentioned. Once you create a storage account and a container, add your blob, then in the left hand panel, you will see something like properties. Now, if you click on these properties, you will see something like primary blob service endpoint, secondary blob service endpoint. So these will you will see. while you want to access this blob service, you have to provide this endpoint. Before providing this primary blob service endpoint, you cannot access the storage account. That is for sure. And it goes for all the storage account. We are discussing about blob, but it same thing goes for the queue. Same thing will go for the table. So all the storage account works like that in the same way. If someone wants to, other application wants to use your blob storage, you have to provide the endpoint URL. You can go inside the settings in the properties. They will show you all the service endpoint for the file, for the queue. If you have, you can provide this. You will copy from here and can provide. To access the blob, we need access keys. It is highly secured. So these are known as access keys. Only with the endpoint URL will, so only it is saying with the help of URL only you won't be able to access. Along with that, we need access keys. So we will mention in the later. So there is also called access keys in the left hand panel only. If you click on, as you can see in the top storage account, there is something called at the top. You can see this key sign, that is access keys. Along with the endpoint URL, you need access keys. Then only the other third party or the third application which you are using inside Logic app, you can create your blob storage or access the blob storage. You understand my point? If you have to access that storage account or a blob, then you have to give URL, which we discussed in the properties. And second thing is very important, access keys. So this is how you will open from the left hand panel access keys, and you can see key, key 1, key 2. This is the primary key. This is the connection string. As you can, this is very, very important. Very, very important. Keys, primary keys, secondary keys, and connection string. This you will provide. And nowadays, more advanced thing is coming. It's not just the endpoint URL and connection string and keys. It's the shared access signature. It's the token based. You must have heard nowadays people are going for the tokens rather than the access key. So nowadays we are using SAS tokens. It's in short we are calling it as a SAS token, not a shared access signature. It's mostly like a SAS token to secure the access to blob. Otherwise anybody can use your blob storage, right? Azure is highly secure. People can't access like without the access of endpoint URL and keys and SAS tokens. Nobody can access your blob storage. So nowadays we are going for SAS to secure the access to blob storage rather than access keys. Now we are done with the blob. You understood the blob. The second storage type of storage is Azure file storage. Now in blob we discussed we need heavy files, we need videos, we need images. So these kind of data will be stored. But in Azure file storage, in Azure file shares, it is more like less lighter kind of things we can say, like a text file or a CSV. So lighter kind of things if we have, we can go for that. Any files like you have a data coming from Symfony or they have XML data. So this kind of files you can store in file storage. Azure file shares can also be cached on Windows servers with Azure File Sync. So these are all little bit advanced. They have protocols, SMS protocol, NFS protocol are there. The same way as you can see in the panel, how you will create a file storage, you will go to the Azure, you will go to in the resource group, you will click on storage account. Once you create a storage account, you will see the left hand panel like this. If you click on overview, you will see containers, you will create a container. There's something called file shares. Okay, one was blob, that was different. Now the other thing is file share. As you can see, there are queues also, tables discussed in the later chapter, but here it is more of a file share. You can see that there is also something called file sync. So Azure file sync allows your files to be stored in Azure storage account. Usually companies allows its users to store file share in Windows Server, but using Azure file sync service, you can sync your files in Azure storage account. So basically it's telling about syncing. Suppose you have something in on-premise, on-premise is like locally you have data and you want to sync your you're migrating to Azure, you want to sync your data. Supposing front end has gone, back end has not gone, so you want to sync some of the data, you can go for Azure File Sync, where it will be used as a service to sync your data. You can access your files seamlessly then, highly available, it is very available. It's like the SLA for Azure is almost like 99.9%. The service level agreement is given by Microsoft. That means that 99%, 9.9% it will be always up. The 0.0% we are saying due to natural calamity or a disaster, that time it will, that is kind of unavoidable kind of situations. For that also you have backups and data centers and redundancy zones. created, but mostly it is 99.9% available. So it's a highly available service. And Azure File Sync enables you to centralize your organization's file shares in. Yeah, definitely when we are saying syncing means it's going to centralize your organization's file shares in Azure Files while keeping the flexibility, performance, and compatibility of Windows File Server. Windows File Server we have in local on-premise, what how we use nowadays. But in cloud, you can use a sync service to sync. Now there's something called Azure Content Delivery Network. Now this is for a rapid delivery of content. Like you need a just now you need the content. It's like within seconds. So it offers a global kind of a solution. Maybe nowadays some of the apps, supposing Netflix you're using, it's a high availability content delivery network. Like within seconds, like you can access all the movies or which you know gets the, in every part of the world. That's a global kind of thing. So it's a rapid delivery of services. It helps to deliver the content to users across the globe by placing content on physical nodes placed across the world. So how it is possible without servers, without these huge data centers and connectivity, it's not possible. So when you have something like you need a responsiveness where it is very quick, you go for Azure Content Delivery Network. You need to have a network. When it's global means definitely you need a network. Save bandwidth and improve responsiveness when encoding or distributing gaming software. It's also telling about gaming software, firmware updates, IoT endpoints, reduce load times for websites, mobile apps, and streaming media. As I mentioned, streaming media like a global news channel or YouTube. So these are highly, I mean, they need a high responsiveness. If supposing you're using a YouTube and you're not getting the response from the video, you're not able to watch, you will never go back to that streaming device, will you? You'll not go to that streaming device. So streaming device needs to be very responsive. It needs to be up and reduce the load times. If it's taking more load time, nobody's gonna use your Netflix or your Amazon. Nobody gonna use. So you have to have reduced load times of websites, such big websites, which like it's globally present. Like all countries almost they're using these apps and services. So guys, we are almost done with our part second of the module, but I will just go little bit introduction because since we have discussed about blobs and files, so I thought I will just introduce you all to the complete storage account which we have apart from those two things because this is I'm taking it from the full course module. I have created a full course module. We are taking the content from there. So we have in detail we have mentioned each and every topic. So when you join the course, you can also do practical things. But yeah, that's what I'm saying. So moving on, we discussed about Azure Blob Storage. We discussed about Azure File Storage, Azure Content Delivery, Azure File Sync. Now we are going to discuss about another type of storage that is Azure Table Storage. Another is Azure Queue Storage. Azure Storage, what is Azure Storage Explorer? This is not a kind of a storage, but it's a place where you can see your storage which you created. And what is Azure Shared Access Signature, which we already just now saw. So what is the Azure Table Storage? Table, as the name itself suggests, you can have kind of a NoSQL kind of a data. It's not a relational kind of a data. You can have like any kind of data in a storage. Azure Table Service is also part of storage. Example, we have an application storing data in the form of table and we want to store it in SQL database. You can also store the data in the table using table service. This is basically a NoSQL data. As I mentioned, it's not a transactional, your typical relational data storage. It's a NoSQL data store. If you have stored in SQL database, it must have been queried using stored procedure, whereas in Azure service, it is not stored on the basis of any predefined schema. There is no predefined schema. There is no relational schema. Any type of data you can store. In the case of SQL, it's comparing with your traditional SQL database. Each column will have its own data type. It might be a string. It was a structured kind of a thing, right? On-premise SQL database, how you guys have been using, it's more of a structured data, right? But here in Azure Table Service, it has no defined. This is very important. If they ask you in interviews also, if you are going to give interviews, they might ask you. So you can say this is the difference between the traditional SQL DB table which we use. It has its own schema. We define the data type and everything is structured. But in case of Azure Table Service, it has no defined schema, guys. The type of data which can be stored is quite flexible. You can play around how data will be stored. That is important as they have mentioned with an example. So like in the left hand side, it is more of a SQL data store and in NoSQL, it's more of a key value pair, name value pair. Okay. In the left hand side, you can see column 1 contains all the course ID, column 2 contains the digits and price. So in key value, you can any type of data in double quote, they put course ID also, in course name also, price also, everything in one. Properties, name, value, schema less. We call it as a schema less. But this course table will only contain data related to course. The order table will only contain data related to order, but it's not the same with the schema list in the Azure table service. No, it's a name value kind of key value kind of a thing. It can have any type of data. It doesn't matter. It's an order or a course. It will include everything. So that is the main difference. It's a schema less design. It can have any type of data. In the first diagram, we will need to perform join operation to fetch data from the tables. Whereas in the schema list, we can fetch using one query both course. As I already discussed, if you want to take only course and only order, then you have to have different table. And if you want data from both the table, you have to use join operation. Whereas in case of NoSQL or Azure table service, in one scenario only, you will get all the data. You can have a course table data also. You can have order table in only one property in one table. So that is the major difference. And in the entity, everything is stored as per the key value pair. So as I mentioned, it's more of a key value pair kind of a thing. There is no data type defined previously. This is a table. Now, after table service, one more important and one of the highly used services, Azure Queue Storage. It is known as a messaging service. So mostly queues, you might have heard it's more of a messaging kind of a service. Okay. For different applications to communicate. Supposing it's a Symphony or a UI Symphony application in the source and SAP application wants to communicate with each other. So one source application has to keep their data somewhere, right? So the messaging service, the FIFO kind of a structure, first in, first out, that is a Azure Queue Storage. It's a messaging service for applications to communicate with each other. It is used to store small bits of data. It's not a big data like a blob. No. For small bits of message, you know how small is a message. It's a small data. It used to store small bits of data for another application to read. Example, customer request is a message sent from source application to be read by another. FIFO, as I discussed, it's a first in, first out. Second application reads the message from the queue. The URL which we got while creating the queue is accessible from outside if you have the keys. As I mentioned, the accessing part of both the blob and the queue is the same. There is no difference. Either you access is via keys like service endpoint and URL and your X primary key, primary connection string or secondary. So these are all the keys. Similarly goes for Azure storage. You will have a endpoint URL, connection string and access keys or a shared access signature. So both ways you can access. As it is also mentioned, the URL is accessed by the access keys. You can go to the left hand panel. After creating a storage account, you will click on access keys and it will show you access keys. Here is a queue service. You go inside storage account, there is a queue service, there is a queues, and in that, yeah, if you select this will get highlighted. The application receives a message in an asynchronous manner. There is no like it's not waiting for any response. It's a messaging service. You give message from here, it will deliver here. The second message is not waiting for the response. Like I should wait. It is a asynchronous. It's not waiting for any response back. Synchronous, on the other hand, is it's waiting for the response and then it starts executing. But a messaging service is basically everywhere it's asynchronous. It is not standing by for the messages. As I mentioned, size of the message can be up to, see, it is so small. Size of the message can be up to only 64 KB. 20,000 requests per second is supported with respect to the performance. Look at the kind of performance they are providing. They are saying you can request 20,000 requests per second in the queue service. This is important. Now, what is Azure Storage Explorer? It is to manage all your storage account. It's nothing related to type of storage. Type of storage we discussed. One is blob, we have table, queues, file storage, Azure file sync, content delivery network. But this is Storage Explorer. It's kind of an explorer where you can view all your storage, whether it's a blob or a queue. Storage Explorer allows you to fully manage storage account. It is a desktop app where you can upload your blobs without login, download. So it's not, it's already provided. You don't have to, okay, it's, you can upload your download and log into Azure credential. You can use the upload button to upload the file. Some companies, because we use in the enterprise, so we already have been given Azure Storage Explorer, and nowadays in I am seeing the latest mod version of Azure portal. We already can see Azure Storage Explorer already. We don't need to install separately because this might be, books they have written little of a earlier version, but nowadays it's more like we can also see Azure Storage Explorer in the portal in the Cosmos DB as well. As we already, this is something called Azure Shared Access Signature. What is Azure Shared Access Signature? To access any of the storage account, whether it's a blob, queue, file, or table, we need keys and connection endpoint or shared access signature. So what is shared access? It's more of a token based. It will have an expiry. It will be a token based. So it's more secure. To access the storage account, access keys will give complete access to all services. They can make use of these services. Otherwise, SAS token, it can give into a multiple level at blob level or account level. You can generate shared access signature using account key, using key 1 or key 2. So that is the benefit. It will have a start and expiry date. It will be only valid for start and end time. That is the benefit. So like that, if you see in the, I have mentioned, you go inside the shared access signature in the left hand side panel. It will take you here. It will allow what access you need. You need it for blob, you need it for file queue. You select that and it will ask you what permission you need, read, write, and start time and expiry time. It will ask you and then you can particular access to particular blob using SAS tokens. So we are done with the all types of storage, guys. Our chapter today, Introduction to Azure Cloud Computing Storage, has been completed. So I thank you all. For now, you can raise your queries and I will take the queries. So yeah, I am ready for the queries now. So you can start. Anyone can start. Whoever has any doubts, we will take the doubts. And for certificates, you guys have to need you need to wait for some time. I will share the certificate with each one of you, the recording as well as the PPT. I will also mention like our community wise where we are operating on a daily basis, so you can join that because I think for the free webinar people are more willing to join that. But I will provide certificate for this course, definitely recording and PPT since you guys have joined on that. So any doubts, guys? We have completed the introduction to cloud computing. Give us the feedback, give us the thumbs up, whether you like it, whether you would like these kind of sessions again. So you can give us feedback. And Ronit has a doubt. Yes, Ronit, you can unmute and talk.
Yes, ma'am. Actually, I wanted to ask, should we prefer the price while buying the Azure service or the region?
Actually,
Like, even if it gives the same latency and the same data capacity.
everything in Azure is price based. If as I mentioned, if your application is very critical, supposing healthcare or banking, so these kind of applications require critical functionality, right? We cannot affect the life of a person who has admitted to the hospital for a small premium. If you're paying premium, definitely you will have to increase the cost budget. But if the
Uh,
application is not that critical, supposing it is a for a retail client or for a some which is not that coming into critical like a food is also like yeah FMCG. So these are the applications which are not that critical. So that time you will not consider paying premium. You will pay
uh,
premium for some high end services requirement, banking, payment, defense, or scientific or these kind of things. But there you can pay premium. You have to pay premium, like you have to pay cost, more cost. But if you don't need that kind of urgency, then you can go for, if you're a retail client, you can go for a standard subscription for storage. Is my understanding correct? This is what you were asking.
mm, no, ma'am, not that 100%, but I wanted to ask, let's say when I'm buying storage in India and remotely from US. So should I prefer which one is cheaper, or should I consider buying from only India because my servers are in India only?
So there are two factors here which you have highlighted. One is you are in India and the other storage is in US. And mostly if we were discussing, we would discuss that if I'm in India, I'll prefer a region Asia Pacific, right? Why I'm preferring Asia Pacific is not only because of cost, no, because of the latency. If I'm getting better performance in Asia Pacific, and budget is also because it's a nearby location, it will be more less charged. But as we discussed, some places even in US they are lower prices. So then you have to discuss at the subscription level, like what region they are specifying, that will be beneficial. If a client is from Canada, as I mentioned, you have to select Canada Central. You can't select Asia Pacific because the servers are there. Client is from that location. More people are associated there. So it's not just about the costing which will define your region. It is also what service you are getting. Are you getting low latency, high performance? Then definitely you go for Asia Pacific. And if in that same budget you're not getting high performance in that region, you change the region. It's up to you. If it that other region is providing you minimal cost and better service, and it's not in India, definitely you can go for US. As they discussed, in US also some regions are cheaper. It's not all the regions are expensive. Got it?
Yes, ma'am. Understood. And also, is it only better to use Azure, or can we create our own databases with Raspberry Pi and other things?
Okay. So yeah, we have discussed this topic in a first module. It's more of a public cloud and a private cloud you're asking, right? One is a public like
Yes,
Azure,
ma'am.
and one is a private cloud like any Raspberry or other IBM is using. It's private. So it is again a very like security issue. Like supposing US, if it's dealing with its defense service and it's going to deploy its defense services, he will not, he will not go to China and keep its resources. You understand my point? There's a thing like they cannot. That's a security issues which will come up, and they can't go for a public kind of a cloud where other companies are sharing resources. Definitely, he will go for a private cloud. Similarly, for banking, if IBM is using a private cloud like IBM Cloud, why it is using that? Why they are spending so much data private? Because some customers, some clients, they need their data to be privacy and security reasons. They don't want to keep in a public or shared service. So that's why they go for a private cloud.
Okay. Thank you.
So any other doubt, guys? Any from anyone? Any doubts, guys? Okay. So I thank you all. So surely we will be, please join a community. I will be sharing your certificates. Drop me an email. I'll mention my phone number and email. You can drop me a message and email me. I will share the certificates and recording with you. Wait. Okay, we
Thank
have
you, ma'am.
and all the updates for a free and a paid webinar we regularly share there. So you can get connected with other members. We want you to interact with others as well. ADV info. I will respond soon. Just expect a little bit delay because we are having one more session in the afternoon. Sales at the rate cornerstone ADV. So yeah, guys, thank you all for joining. Get in touch, and I'll surely share the certificate and recordings with you all. Thank you. I'll stop the recording.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah.